The journey of spiritual awakening often manifests through subtle signs that radiate from within. As Helena once observed, the eyes are the windows to the soul, and indeed, this ancient wisdom reveals the first unmistakable trace of a spiritually evolved woman. The gaze that transcends. When you encounter a spiritually powerful woman, her eyes speak volumes before her lips part. There exists a certain quality in her gaze, a stillness amidst movement, a depth that seems to reach beyond the physical realm. This is not merely about physical beauty, but rather an energy that emanates from within. Her eyes carry a particular light, as though she perceives layers of reality that remain invisible to others. This transcendent gaze is not something acquired through practice, but rather emerges naturally as the spirit awakens. It reflects an inner wisdom that has been cultivated through life's trials and triumphs. When she looks at you, you may feel truly seen, perhaps for the first time. She perceives not just your physical presence, but the entirety of your being, your struggles, your potential, your divine essence. Notice how such women maintain eye contact, not with intensity that intimidates, but with a gentle presence that invites truth. There is both compassion and clarity in this gaze, a balance that comes from having walked through darkness and emerged carrying her own light. Silent resilience. The second sign manifests in her response to life's inevitable challenges. The spiritually strong woman possesses a resilience that does not announce itself with loud declarations, but reveals itself in the quiet persistence of her spirit. When waves of adversity crash upon her shores, she may bend, she may even momentarily break, but she never remains shattered. This resilience is not cold stoicism or emotional suppression. Rather, it is a profound acceptance of life's dual nature, its pain and its beauty. She has learned to transform suffering into wisdom, not by denying the pain, but by allowing it to flow through her without becoming defined by it. Her strength lies not in avoiding wounds, but in the sacred art of healing. You may recognize this quality in how she speaks of her challenges, not as burdens that have crushed her, but as teachers that have sculpted her spirit. There is a dignity in her acceptance, a grace in her recovery that inspires others without any intention to do so. Her resilience teaches without preaching, showing that true spiritual strength is not about escaping suffering, but finding meaning within it. The protective aura. The third sign manifests in the inexplicable sense of safety that surrounds her presence. Animals sense it first, how they gravitate toward her, calm in her company. Children too, with their uncorrupted intuition, find comfort in her proximity. This is the manifestation of her protective aura, an energetic field that extends beyond her physical form. This protective quality isn't something she consciously projects. Rather, it is the natural radiation of a heart that has learned to love without conditions. Her energy creates a sanctuary wherever she goes, not through effort, but through essence. In chaotic environments, you might notice how the space around her seems to remain inexplicably calm, as though the very air responds to her inner harmony. This protection she offers is not a shield that blocks experience, but rather a container strong enough to hold whatever arises. In her presence, others feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to reveal parts of themselves they usually keep hidden. This is the mark of true spiritual power, not the ability to dominate, but the capacity to create spaces where authenticity can flourish. Sharpened intuition. The fourth vestige of spiritual strength manifests in her relationship with the unseen realms of knowing. Her intuition functions not as occasional flashes of insight, but as a consistent inner guidance system. She perceives truths that lie beneath surfaces, presences intentions before they're revealed, and often knows what will unfold before events take physical form. This intuitive capacity isn't supernatural, but rather a natural human ability that she has reclaimed through spiritual awakening. Her connection to inner wisdom allows her to navigate relationships with discernment, recognizing the difference between projection and perception. She knows when someone's words contradict their energy, when situations contain hidden dangers, and when opportunities align with her true path. You may notice how she pauses before important decisions, not in hesitation, but in communion with her deeper knowing. She trusts this inner voice not out of blind faith, but because experience has proven its reliability. This intuition serves not only her personal journey, but extends as guidance to those around her, offering insights that bypass intellectual understanding to touch the heart of truth. Connection with nature. The fifth sign of a spiritually powerful woman lies in her profound relationship with the natural world. Unlike the casual appreciation many might express, her connection runs deep, almost as though she and nature speak a language known only to each other. She understands that the earth is not merely a backdrop to human existence, but a living, breathing entity with which we share a sacred covenant. When she walks among trees, her steps carry reverence. She doesn't simply observe nature, she communes with it. The rustling leaves become messages, the patterns of clouds reveal omens, and the cycles of the moon guide her inner rhythms. This connection isn't something she cultivates as a hobby. It's an essential aspect of her spiritual practice, a relationship as vital to her as any human bond. You might notice how she seems to find guidance in natural settings that others overlook. A feather on her path isn't just a discarded part of a bird, but a sign pointing toward lightness of being. The sudden appearance of certain animals in her presence isn't coincidence, but communication. She reads the book of nature with the fluency of one who recognizes it as the original sacred text. This connection serves as both sanctuary and classroom. In moments of confusion, she returns to natural settings not merely for comfort, but for clarity. The rushing river teaches her about surrendering to life's flow. The oak tree demonstrates steadfast patience. The changing seasons reveal the beauty of impermanence. Nature becomes her temple, her teacher, and her trusted confidant. What distinguishes this connection from mere appreciation is its reciprocal nature. The natural world seems to respond to her presence. Gardens flourish under her care, not just through practical knowledge, but through a mysterious exchange of energy. Animals approach her with unusual trust, sensing the absence of threat and the presence of understanding. This mutual relationship becomes one of the most reliable indicators of her spiritual development. The power of healing. The sixth vestige manifests in her remarkable capacity to facilitate healing, not necessarily through formal training or techniques, but through the quality of her presence itself. There exists around her an energy that soothes distress, calms chaos, and creates conditions where healing naturally occurs. This healing presence operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the physical plane, her touch might carry a warmth that seems to find its way to points of pain. Her hands may instinctively move to areas of tension or discomfort in others, bringing relief that transcends explanation. This isn't necessarily about dramatic cures, but about facilitating the body's natural healing processes through energy that flows through her but does not originate from her. On the emotional level, her capacity for healing reveals itself in how others naturally disclose their wounds in her presence. Without technique or manipulation, she creates a field where buried emotions surface gently for acknowledgement and release. A conversation with her often leaves others feeling lighter, as though invisible burdens have been dissolved. This happens not through any conscious effort on her part, but through the authentic presence she embodies. Her words, too, carry healing properties. She speaks not from memorized wisdom, but from lived truth, and this authenticity allows her communication to bypass intellectual defenses and touch the heart directly. She may not offer elaborate advice, but the simple truths she shares seem to arrive precisely when needed, containing exactly what the listener requires. What makes this healing power distinct is its lack of depletion. Unlike those who exhaust themselves in service to others, her healing presence seems to strengthen rather than diminish her. This suggests she isn't generating this energy, but channeling it from a source beyond herself, allowing universal life force to flow through her unobstructed by ego or agenda. The revealing silence. The seventh sign emerges in her relationship with silence, not as absence, but as presence. In a world that increasingly fears quiet moments, she has made peace with stillness and discovered its revelatory power. Her comfort with silence stands as testament to her spiritual maturity. This quality manifests in conversation, where she listens not while formulating responses but with her entire being. She creates spaces between words where truth can emerge without force. You might notice how others find themselves sharing more deeply in her presence, revealing thoughts they hadn't intended to disclose, not because she extracts confidences, but because her silence creates room for authenticity to surface naturally. Her silence isn't passive, but receptive, an active state of awareness rather than empty waiting. In group settings, she speaks less frequently than others, but with greater impact, having distilled her thoughts in the crucible of contemplation. When she does speak, her words carry the weight of genuine reflection rather than reactivity or habitual thinking. This relationship with silence extends to her spiritual practice. While others might fill meditation with techniques and goals, she has learned to rest in the vastness of quiet awareness. Her spirituality isn't announced through external displays but is revealed in the quality of presence she brings to ordinary moments. The silence she cultivates isn't an escape from life, but an immersion in its depths. You might recognize this quality in how she responds to life's uncertainties. Where others rush to fill gaps in understanding with explanations or activities, she remains comfortable dwelling in the questions themselves. This tolerance for mystery, for not knowing, creates space for deeper wisdom to emerge. Her silence becomes a bridge between visible and invisible realms, between what is known and what lies beyond knowledge. This comfort with silence creates ripples in her environment. Rooms feel different in her presence, calmer, more spacious, as though time itself expands. This atmosphere isn't something she deliberately creates, but is the natural radiation of a mind that has found its center, a heart that rests in its own fullness rather than seeking completion externally. The strength in detachment, the eighth sign of a spiritually evolved woman, manifests in her relationship with attachment, not in an absence of caring, but in a profound understanding of impermanence and divine timing. This quality of detachment represents one of the most misunderstood spiritual attributes, yet it serves as a powerful indicator of inner development. True detachment isn't cold indifference or emotional withdrawal. Rather, it is the ability to love fully while simultaneously honoring the freedom of all beings and circumstances to follow their natural course. The spiritually strong woman has learned that clinging to people, outcomes, possessions, or identities creates suffering not only for herself, but for everything she attempts to hold captive in her grasp. You might observe this quality in how she navigates relationships. She loves deeply, yet there exists a spaciousness in her connections, an absence of the suffocating quality that often characterizes attachment disguised as love. She doesn't manipulate or control to maintain relationships, understanding that authentic bonds thrive in freedom rather than constraint. When relationships naturally conclude their course, she may feel sadness, but moves through it without desperate attempts to reverse what has completed its cycle. This detachment extends to material possessions as well. While she may appreciate beauty and comfort, her sense of security and identity doesn't depend on external acquisitions. She can lose belongings without losing herself. There's a lightness in her relationship with the material world that speaks of knowing the difference between enjoying and identifying, between having and being had. Perhaps most significantly, her detachment reveals itself in her relationship with outcomes. She acts with intention and care, but surrenders the fruits of her actions to larger forces. This isn't passive resignation, but active trust in the unfolding wisdom of the universe. She plants seeds with diligence, but doesn't dig them up repeatedly to check their progress, understanding that growth has its own timeline that cannot be forced. What makes this detachment particularly powerful is that it coexists with deep engagement. She isn't removed from life, but immersed in it, participating fully, while simultaneously recognizing its dreamlike, transient nature. This paradoxical capacity to be both fully present and ultimately free stands as one of the clearest signs of spiritual maturity. The key to forgiveness. The ninth vestige reveals itself in her relationship with injuries both given and received. The spiritually strong woman has discovered forgiveness not merely as a virtue to be practiced, but as a pathway to liberation. Her capacity to release resentment transforms the heaviness of old wounds into the lightness of new understanding. This forgiveness isn't about denying harm or pretending injury didn't occur. Rather, it emerges from a deeper recognition that holding grievances chains one to past suffering, while forgiveness opens doorways to present freedom. She has learned that forgiveness benefits the forgiver even more than the forgiven. releasing internal poisons that would otherwise continue their corrosive work. You might recognize this quality in how she speaks of those who have caused her pain. There's an absence of the bitter edge that typically characterizes descriptions of past hurts. She can acknowledge what happened without being energetically entangled in the events. The story remains, but its emotional charge has been neutralized through the alchemical process of forgiveness. This capacity extends to self-forgiveness as well. She holds herself accountable for mistakes without collapsing into shame or self-condemnation. There's a gentle honesty in how she acknowledges her own shadows, neither minimizing nor magnifying them, but seeing them clearly and choosing again. This balance between responsibility and compassion creates space for genuine transformation, rather than merely performative penance. What distinguishes her forgiveness from spiritual bypassing is its foundation in truth rather than avoidance. She doesn't forgive to escape the discomfort of legitimate anger, but moves through that emotion to reach the freedom waiting on its other side. This forgiveness isn't weak acquiescence, but powerful reclamation of her energy from situations that would otherwise continue to drain it. Perhaps most remarkably, she has discovered how to transform former sources of pain into catalysts for compassion. The very experiences that might have hardened her heart instead become wellsprings of understanding for others walking similar paths. This alchemical conversion of suffering into service represents spiritual strength in its most mature manifestation. The eternal inner flame, the 10th and perhaps most fundamental sign of spiritual strength in women, manifests as an inner flame that remains lit regardless of external circumstances. This isn't blind optimism or forced positivity, but a deeper connection to a source that transcends the fluctuations of material existence. This inner flame reveals itself most clearly during life's darkest passages. When external lights dim through loss, failure, illness, or betrayal, something within her continues to glow. This isn't because she denies darkness, but because she has discovered light that exists beyond the dualities of darkness and brightness. A luminosity that permeates all conditions rather than depending on favorable ones. You might recognize this quality in her consistency. While others are thrown into despair by disappointment or inflated by success, she maintains a steady center. This doesn't mean she doesn't experience the full range of human emotions. She feels deeply, but these feelings move through her rather than defining her. Beneath changeable weather patterns of emotion flows the constant current of her essential nature. This flame manifests in her relationship with purpose as well. Unlike motivation that requires external fuel, her sense of meaning arises from within and remains accessible even when rewards are absent. She acts from internal alignment rather than external incentives, guided by values that transcend circumstance. This self-generating quality to her purpose allows her to persist when others might abandon their path. The inner flame also illuminates her faith, not necessarily in religious doctrines, though these may be part of her practice, but in the underlying benevolence of existence itself. She trusts in the inherent meaningfulness of life, not because she's been protected from its harshness, but because she's discovered purpose within that harshness. This isn't faith maintained through avoidance of questions, but one that has withstood questioning and emerged deeper. What makes this flame remarkable is that it requires no protection from life's winds. Unlike fragile spiritual identities that must be sheltered from challenge, her connection to Source strengthens through engagement with life's complexities. Each difficulty becomes fuel rather than threat. Each question an invitation to deeper understanding, rather than a danger to be avoided. The journey of awakening. The path of the spiritually powerful woman is not linear, but cyclical, moving through seasons of growth, harvest, release, and renewal. Understanding these cycles reveals the deeper architecture of spiritual evolution, how these 10 vestiges develop not in isolation, but as an integrated whole, each quality nurturing and reinforcing the others. The spiritual journey often begins with glimpses, moments of clarity when the veil between worlds thins and a greater reality becomes momentarily visible. For many women, these early experiences create a hunger for truth that conventional structures cannot satisfy. This hunger initiates the quest, setting them upon a path both ancient and uniquely their own. As the journey progresses, challenges emerge not as obstacles, but as initiations. Each difficulty encountered serves as an invitation to embody spiritual strength more fully. The loss of a relationship becomes an opportunity to develop detachment. A betrayal offers the chance to practice forgiveness. Illness invites deeper connection with the body's wisdom. What initially appears as misfortune reveals itself as the precise catalyst needed for the next stage of awakening. This understanding transforms her relationship with difficulty. Rather than asking, "Why is this happening to me?" she inquires, "What is this teaching me?" This shift from victim consciousness to student consciousness accelerates her evolution, turning every experience, pleasant or painful, into a doorway to greater awareness. Life itself becomes her primary spiritual teacher, offering precisely the lessons her soul requires. As she advances, she discovers that spiritual development occurs not through accumulation, but through removal, the gradual clearing away of all that obscures her essential nature. The qualities described throughout this text aren't acquisitions, but revelations of what was always present beneath layers of conditioning. Her task becomes not to attain spiritual strength, but to recognize and remove the barriers to strength already inherent within her. This understanding brings humility to her practice. She recognizes that her progress on the path isn't personal achievement, but participation in a grace that extends beyond her individual existence. The spiritual qualities emerging through her are not possessions to claim, but gifts to steward, channels through which universal wisdom can flow into a world that desperately needs it. The integration of vestiges. The 10 vestiges of spiritual strength do not exist as separate attributes, but function as an integrated system, each quality supporting and enhancing the others. Understanding these relationships reveals how spiritual development creates a self-reinforcing cycle of growth once certain thresholds are crossed. Consider how her transcendent gaze connects with her intuition, the clear seeing of her eyes reflecting the clear perception of her inner vision. These qualities mutually strengthen each other, external observation informing internal knowing, while internal insights guide what she notices in the visible world. This marriage of outer and inner sight creates a comprehensive awareness that perceives both form and essence simultaneously. Her silent resilience and protective aura similarly reinforce one another. The inner strength developed through navigating her own challenges creates the stability that others sense and trust. Simultaneously, the practice of holding space for others strengthens her own capacity to remain centered during difficulty. This reciprocal relationship transforms service from sacrifice to synergy. What she offers others ultimately nourishes her as well. Her connection with nature and her healing presence form another powerful partnership. The regenerative energy she absorbs through communion with the natural world becomes the same force she channels toward others' healing. She serves as conduit rather than source, drawing from the limitless reservoir of natural wisdom and directing it where needed. This flow prevents the depletion that often accompanies healing work, allowing her to serve without exhausting her personal resources. Perhaps the most profound integration occurs between her detachment, forgiveness, and inner flame. Detachment creates the space in which forgiveness becomes possible, while forgiveness fuels the inner flame that burns regardless of external circumstance. This trinity forms the core of spiritual resilience, the capacity to remain connected to Source regardless of what circumstances arise in the material world. As these qualities mature and integrate, they create a foundation for her unique expression of divine purpose. The spiritually strong woman doesn't simply embody these attributes as personal virtues, but channels them towards service that aligns with both universal need and her individual gifts. This alignment of being and doing represents spiritual strength in its most complete manifestation, living as light in a world of shadows. The ultimate test of spiritual strength lies not in isolated practice, but in engagement with a world that often operates from very different principles. The truly evolved woman doesn't retreat from this complexity, but brings her awakened presence directly into its midst, serving as living testimony to alternative possibilities. In professional environments driven by competition, she demonstrates the power of collaboration. In social contexts dominated by appearance, she embodies the authority of authentic presence. In political landscapes divided by ideology, she holds space for nuance and common ground. These apparent contradictions, being spiritual in secular spaces, peaceful in conflicted ones, certain in ambiguous territories, constitute her greatest offering. This engagement requires discernment rather than judgment. She recognizes the shadow aspects of collective consciousness not as enemies to battle, but as wounded parts requiring integration and healing. Her response to destructive systems combines clear seeing with compassionate understanding, neither condoning harm nor condemning those caught within harmful patterns. Her presence in the everyday world creates subtle ripples that extend far beyond her immediate influence. When she brings full awareness to ordinary interactions with the cashier, the colleague, the family member, she disrupts unconscious patterns and creates momentary openings through which greater awareness can enter. These small awakenings accumulate, contributing to collective evolution in ways that cannot be measured, but nonetheless transform the fabric of shared reality. This integration of spiritual strength with worldly engagement doesn't come without challenges. She may experience periods of isolation when others cannot comprehend her perspective, or resistance when her presence triggers unconscious fears in those not ready to awaken. During these times, her connection with like-minded souls becomes essential, not as an escape from difficulty, but as a reminder that she participates in a larger movement of consciousness that transcends individual experience. Ultimately, the spiritually strong woman recognizes that her journey serves purposes beyond personal liberation. The qualities she embodies create templates for possibilities in collective consciousness, demonstrating what becomes available when feminine wisdom fully awakens. Her very existence becomes an invitation, not through proselytizing, but through presence, calling others toward their own awakening. As these women find each other across boundaries of geography, culture, and tradition, they form an invisible web of awakened feminine consciousness that holds profound transformative potential. Their individual flames, joining in constellation, create light sufficient to illuminate new pathways for a world in transition. In this sense, the spiritual strength of women becomes not merely personal attribute, but planetary resource, exactly the medicine needed for our current evolutionary moment. The 10 vestiges described throughout this text are not merely signs for identification, but invitations for embodiment. They represent qualities available to all who undertake the journey of awakening with sincerity and persistence. The spiritually strong woman is not separate from you, but exists as potential within you, waiting for recognition and expression. Her emergence doesn't require special circumstances or unusual abilities, only the courage to face yourself honestly and the commitment to align increasingly with the truth your spirit has always known. Did these signs resonate with your spirit? Perhaps you recognized yourself in these descriptions, or maybe you glimpsed the woman you're becoming. This ancient wisdom isn't meant to remain as words on a screen. It's an invitation to awaken the spiritual strength that already exists within you. Subscribe now to continue this journey of spiritual discovery. Each week, we explore sacred truths that transform not just understanding, but being itself. By joining our community, you connect with others walking this path of feminine spiritual power. Share your experiences in the comments below. Which of these 10 signs speaks most deeply to your soul? What challenges have you faced in embracing your spiritual gifts? Your voice matters in this conversation, and your insights may be exactly what another seeker needs to hear today. Remember, true transformation happens in connection. Subscribe, comment, and take the first step toward claiming the spiritual heritage that is rightfully yours. The awakening begins with a single choice. Make it now.